Madam Speaker, it is with serious responsibility and acknowledgement of the benefit of collective efforts that I rise to debate this Plastic Waste Reduction Bill 2025. I start by asking us, why are we here today? Think about it. We are here today to protect people, planet, and livelihoods. Plastics are directly linked to economic diversification and empowerment, to planetary health, and to human health. A key pillar of this nation's sustainability agenda is Pillar 6, the circular economy. This is an economic system based on the reuse, the regeneration, and the recycling of materials. Simply put, it's a production system which involves sharing, repairing, and recycling of existing materials as much as possible and as long as possible. We can take a simple example from our existing waste disposal habits here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Our landfill. It has scrap metal. This, for St. Kitts and for Nevis, it's discarded metal materials that are suitable for reprocessing and recycling. However, here, it's simply piled in a stock on our landfill. For many countries, scrap metal is a valuable source of raw material for recycling for industries like steel, copper, and aluminum. These small pieces of metal are viable sources of income for many countries, for many communities. Here, we separate our items into cells, and of course, the critical next step, which is economic generation or income generation, is missed. Circularity encourages the reuse, the recycle, the repurposing, and the attainment of livelihoods. We are forced with this notion of circularity in our Sustainable Island State agenda to push for durability, longevity, sharing, repurposing. I repeat and reiterate for emphasis. We are pushed to purchase less, to replace less, and to share our resources. But certainly, everything that we do in the environmental agenda isn't solely about planetary protection. It's also economic. The vision of the Ministry of Environment et al., that's the Environment, Climate Action, Constituency Empowerment, Solid Waste Management Corporation, and Parks and Beaches, have been driven by a very simple vision of making climate resilience, environmental stewardship, and pollution control a bread and butter issue, directly connected to our pockets, our livelihoods, and our survival. So I'm going to use this opportunity to thank the ministry, past and present leaders, for championing not just the Sustainable Island State agenda, but the environmental stewardship agenda and the climate resilience agenda. Thank you so much for championing 4 long years of work to ensure we got to this critical stage of passing legislation. I think that deserves a little acknowledgement. For 2.5 years, the ministry has been mapping, conceptualizing, verifying, and fine-tuning the various elements of this March 31 ban on single-use plastics. However, transparently, and I've said this many times before, the work did not start with the assumption of my role as the Minister of Environment. Before me, the member for Nevis 10 has championed and supported this critical work. It would be very prudent of us to extend parliamentary thanks to the member for Nevis 10 for his outstanding work from previous years. So from 4 years plus, we have engaged various stakeholders, agencies and local businesses, manufacturers, waste management corporations, government agencies, and bilateral partners, including local partners, the Ministry of Trade, Finance, Tourism, Customs and Excise, small businesses, Bureau of Standards, the Legal Department, et al. And together, we have charted a course for the implementation of the single-use plastic ban. So what's the real problem with plastics? We are all aware of the mountain of challenges that we face with plastic pollution. So I'm not going to belabor the point, but naturally I have an obligation to share our reality. And I do welcome the slides of the mountains of plastic cells at the St. Kitts landfill. So the first commercial plastic, which probably was produced in about 1907, is still on planet Earth and will be here for a very long time. Because as we know, a very simple fact, they don't just disappear. Plastic is one of the largest threats our oceans face. It's the cornerstone of civilization with over 400 tons produced annually. More than half of the plastics, admittedly, go to the landfill. Some of it is incinerated, recycled, and upcycled. But about 20% of plastic is not produced, is not properly collected, and ends up as litter. For a small island developing state, yes, thank you, these are our cells of plastic at the St. Kitts, the Solid Waste Management Corporation landfill, getting ready to be baled, but this is what we generate every single year. Yes. So for St. Kitts and Nevis, such a large-scale and often indiscriminate disposal of these inorganic items, the plastic bag, the bottle, the cup, the cutlery, the bottle cap, amongst other things, overpower our waste management systems and clogs our landfill. The problem of plastic emissions is most acute in countries where incomes are growing, like us here in St. Kitts and Nevis, where plastic consumption is growing, but waste management systems and infrastructures, as you can see, struggle to effectively deal with increasing consumption. Plastic waste on land can be managed, but for coastal mountainous countries like St. Kitts and Nevis, we have a serious problem, especially with oceanic plastic waste. Our guts are arteries connecting mountainous land-based waste to the ocean. During storms and rain events, plastic makes its way to our oceans using our guts. This means that 80% of the litter on land will end up in our oceans. Floating plastic in the ocean eventually makes it back to somebody's shoreline. And we have plastics washing up on our shoreline that their source is far away, as far as the Atlantic and Pacific. This has very serious consequences for fishing industry, for the tourism industry, and results in heavy cleanup costs that we bear for our coastal communities. The plastics which don't reach the beach or don't beach will sink, some of them, the PET bottles in particular, but many of them, including plastic caps, will float for many years. And then eventually they accumulate in massive subtropic oceanic areas called gyres, which are massive circular currents which trap plastic for decades. I'm certain many of us have heard of the Great Pacific Plastic Trap. Google it when you have time. There was once one, there is now 5. In the Caribbean, we have our own plastic trap developing. It is seriously problematic. Let's think of just the visual aesthetics. Can you imagine a cruise ship, Royal Caribbean, sailing through our oceans and diverting through plastic waste? or tourists swimming on our beach and pushing away plastic bottles. Seriously problematic. The problem continues when we consider the serious challenge of ghost fishing. And this is a very problematic issue. Abandoned fishing gear, which then become ghost fishing material. Abandoned nets, abandoned lines, which trap fish. Fishermen don't want them anymore. Trawlers don't need them anymore. They leave them in the ocean. And these are critical problems that we're having. And connected to this, these plastics trapped in this oceanic plastic trap slowly disintegrate. And they disintegrate into microplastics. And fish consume them. And we are a fish-eating country. Then we consume the fish with the microplastics. And then we become sick. But I leave the medical part to other contributors. But the challenge is marine biologists no longer ask if our marine life has plastic. The question is, how much? So we've seen every viral video of plastic straws stuck in the nose of a turtle, of the plastic trap, of turtles with the rims around their neck. It's very problematic for our marine life. And our economies are tied to marine resources. Our economies are tied to tourism development. So what we're doing here in the Ministry of Environment is not just to protect planet and animals and marine life and health, but to protect your livelihoods and your income. To get here, we've had a very long period of consultation. There are many options for dealing with plastic pollution. The reality is it's not driven by a demand for the product only, but rather by increasing supply and demand for products that we really love. Coca-Cola, bottled water, the convenience, the simplicity serves us, but creates a lasting problem for the environment. The reality is, too, that we can't landfill, bury, incinerate, nor recycle our way out of the plastic trap. We can scoop up all of the plastic in the environment, but where are we going to send it? Which country is going to accept it? Gone are the days when China accepted other people's waste. We can't put it in the ocean. It cannot fit in our landfill. And we cannot send it to space. So what do we do? The solution here is that we have to turn the plastic tap off. I heard one analogy which said, dealing with plastic by recycling or incinerating is like being in a bathtub with the tap on, with a spoon, trying to bail out the water from the bathtub. It's totally impossible. To deal with plastics, we must turn off the plastic tap. We have chosen to turn off the plastic tap by shutting down the production of plastic with real policies that create systemic change, phasing out single-use plastics that pollute the most, ending fossil fuel subsidies that fuel big plastic production, and holding companies responsible for the plastic waste that they produce. A zero-waste future, which is sustainable, circular, and supports people, planet, and livelihoods, requires systematic, strategic, and targeted solutions with appropriate legislation. And that is why we're here today. The SDGs and the plastic ban are interconnected. In banning single-use plastics here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we are advancing our attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. SDG number 3, good health and well-being. SDG number 6, clean water and sanitation. SDG number 11, sustainable cities and communities. SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. SDG 13, climate action. SDG 14, life below water. And SDG 16, life on land. We didn't get here without partnership for environmental awareness and diplomacy. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we have opted for the phased ban approach with supporting legislation. Importantly, the complementary work of the St. Kitts and Nevis Solid Waste Management and Recycling Program, in partnership with our longest friends, the Republic of China on Taiwan, and its Taiwan ICDF program, has yielded tremendous results, of which we should never fail to applaud and recognize. Allow me to extend sincere thanks to our friends and partners in our drive to sustainability. So I'm encouraging now all government departments which have not yet started their plastic collection program to establish a plastic bottle drop collection space. This can be as simple as we've done in our ministry, a box for bottles. Very simple. Collect your plastic bottles, have them taken to the landfill. Now, if you reference Section 5 of the actual bill, which speaks to our phased out period, we have been working across a phased implementation timeline to allow everyone to acquaint themselves with the bill. Here, this period speaks to, we began in 2004, December, with the ban on the importation of T-shirt plastic shopping bags, and a willing shift, we went 2024. Thank you so much. To second gear, which is happening in the next couple days, on 31st March 2025, the ban on sale and distribution of those plastics. On the 30th of April 2025, we're moving to the ban on the importation of styrofoam containers and egg crates and single-use plastic straws, which will be followed by a ban on the distribution of these items in July 2025. Our last phase will commence on the 31st of August 2025 with a ban on the importation of single-use plastic plates, cups, and cutlery, followed by a ban on the distribution of the same on the 30th of November 2025. We wanted to make certain that this transition was not rushed or haphazardly done, but rather executed smoothly, sensibly over time, and with full consideration for the undeniable impacts it will have on local individuals, the business owners, the vendors, the consumers, the retailers, and all other stakeholders. Interestingly, our research and outreach revealed a pre-existing readiness among stakeholders. They were actually the ones expressing concern to us about the plastic waste in communities, the ecological consequences, the strain it places on our waste management systems, and the negative implications of this pollution on our island's natural beauty, our tourism product. In our community surveys, we were being told by local businesses of the challenges related to plastics and the need to introduce viable alternatives to kick-start change. And on the importance of data-backed decision-making. Back in 2019, following a national coastal cleanup, and you've heard me reference the cost to communities and our ministry to have these annual cleanups, it was found that plastic waste made up the most of the debris we collected. Over 3,000 plastic pieces, 3,600 plastic bottles, and 3,000 bottle caps were removed from our shorelines. And we didn't touch every beach in 2019, and we can never touch every beach in an annual cleanup. And these items They represent only a small portion of the total amount of plastic litter, as most plastic waste items remain unaccounted for. The raw data that highlights the magnitude of this issue is saying, through facts and figures, that there is an urgent need for policy changes to curb these harmful trends. These consultations, coupled with the clear evidence of the environmental and economic cost of single-use plastics and the broader global movement to reduce plastic pollution, have led us to the decisive action to protect the environment of St. Kitts and Nevis, now and for generations to come. So we engage stakeholders, and I will read the entire list. Major supermarkets, Montserrat Plastics, Customs and Excise, Bureau of Standards, Ministry of Tourism, all hotels, Department of Marine Resources, Small Business Development Center, Ministry of Trade, Agriculture, Chamber of Industry and Commerce, water bottle stakeholders, Ministry of Health, bakeries, hardware stores, TDC, ACE, Courts, Builders Paradise, Ricardo, Forum Deco, restaurants, pharmacies. We consulted with every government ministry, including Bureau of Standards, Customs and Excise, Tourism, the Ministry of Finance, Hosford's, Rams Trading, Best Buy, Kuma's, Chinese supermarkets, TDC Group of Companies, Harper's, Food Center, Odi Brisbane, St. Kitts Rotary Club, the Liamiga Rotary Club. Did we leave anybody out? No. And also checking if you're listening, we didn't leave anybody out. Importantly, I want to reference one of our meetings with Customs and Excise, where that meeting, the officers highlighted that the absence of legislation on the importation of T-shirt plastic bags was needed. While the and I think we have a photo of that meeting with Customs and Excise. While the single-use plastic ban was put in place on the 31st of December 2024, there were no legal provisions to allow customs to stop or seize shipments of the T-shirt bags, creating a gap in enforcement. The customs officers strongly urged the passing of this single-use ban legislation to address this issue so that it could be prioritized to prevent potential misuse. So we didn't come here on our own thinking that legislation was needed. There were departments and ministries which recommended that for their effective functioning in support of the ban, we needed legislation. The consultations with the Bureau of Standards, if we look at our second schedule, will note the labeling standards as indicated by the Bureau of Standards. So I want to thank the ministers here of Customs and Excise, that's our member for number 8, as well as the Minister of Trade, member for number 6, for the support of the entire staff and ministry in their respective ministries. The labeling standards are clearly outlined in the second schedule, and this gives an indication of the packaging and labeling standards and the environmental standards, including testing standards. The consultation with the Chamber of Industry and Commerce has been ongoing, productive, and deeply instructive. I think it is important for me to acknowledge the most recent correspondence between us and the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, which represents many of our business entities. The Chamber in January reached out for clarity on key options and impacts on some of their members with regards to clarity on acceptable alternatives, the timeline for cessation, the plastic sack producers, and of course, support to transition alternatives. To which our ministry made it absolutely clear that we did not identify any alternatives, biodegradable alternatives, because there is an ongoing regional debate about biodegradable standards. However, we are pushing that only reusable bags are encouraged as an acceptable alternative to ensure the effectiveness of the ban. Biodegradable and compostable bags are not permitted as they often do not degrade effectively under local environmental conditions and could increase pollution. In the timeline for the cessation of the ban, we emphasized that the cessation of the plastic bags does not adversely affect distributors such as supermarkets, as these businesses typically provide bags to consumers free of charge. Given that these bags were originally intended for distribution, companies, as of today, with remaining stocks, are encouraged to distribute them to their consumers before the March 31 deadline. Some stakeholders have inquired about charging a fee for plastic bags, and the ministry recommends, but we have no objection to this practice prior to the deadline. However, it is important to emphasize that the ministry cannot and will not extend the 31st March ban. We have given stakeholders and businesses 12 months' notice to prepare for the transition, offering ample time for importers, distributors, and retailers to deplete existing stocks and adapt to new regulations. Stakeholders are asked to use the remaining time effectively to ensure compliance with stipulated deadline. For the impact on Montserrat Plastics, the Department of Environment has engaged in extensive communication with the sole producer of plastic t-shirt bags, Montserrat Plastics, to address the challenges posed by the ban. As a result of this collaboration, the company has developed a solution in the form of properly labeled reusable bags, meeting the requirements of the new regulations. As it relates to the support to transition to alternatives, we acknowledge the financial and logistic challenges associated with transitioning to alternatives, particularly for the retail sector. In recognition of this, the minister, that's me, in our budget speech in 2024, announced a 2-year concession period for paper-based alternatives and reusable bags to ease the burden on businesses. This measure aims to lower cost and incentivize the adoption of sustainable practices. We encourage all businesses to take advantage of this concession, which started in January 2025 and continues for 2 years, to allow for a smooth transition and less financial burden on your small businesses. Madam Speaker, we continue our consultation and we can share our roadmap until next week. In fact, next week, Tuesday and Friday, we have planned consultations expecting over 75 stakeholders to sit with us as we work towards our deadline. As I mentioned, grants and concessions have been offered to relevant stakeholders to assist with the transition of small businesses to reusable bags. Now, Madam Speaker, let's be real, even more real for a moment. When we implemented the ban in December 2024, we acknowledged that behavioral change and adjustment was the driving force here. With this passing of the legislation, we are acknowledging that enforcement is critical to support behavioral change. Yesterday, I went to the supermarket, Value Mart, I think, and I bought one of their reusable bags because I was just too lazy to go back in the car to collect one of the 100 bags that are in my car. And the attendant said to me, "Would you like some plastic bags?" I said, "What's going on here?" I said, "Sure." and she gave me a roll of plastic bags. And I smiled, and she said, would you like another roll? And I said, sure, why not? And I took it. Seems ironic, right? But we know that on March 31st, April 1st, when you go into a supermarket, you're not given a plastic bag. You must walk with your own bag. We know that while for St. Kitts and Nevis, it is true that every single shopping bag, supermarket, the t-shirt bag, is recycled at least once. We use it for garbage. Who doesn't do that? Okay. The plastic bags. Of course, we use all of the t-shirt plastic bags. I mean, some of us, if we could afford it, would buy the garbage bags. But in your household, the shopping bag eventually becomes the garbage bag. So yes, we are eliminating a source of your garbage bag and might be compelling you as a consumer to purchase garbage bags. So that's the irony, but the solution herein, that there are some supermarkets who will willingly distribute their existing bags, and you have options for a couple more months for garbage collection. Now, it's either that or they take a trailer load of plastics to the landfill, or you take them to the landfill in a slower process. Either way, it is something that we expected to happen. In Antigua and Barbuda, I think they just dumped them. It was like, we just had this problem and we just had to dump them. I think even Harper's Antigua sent their branded bags over to Harper's St. Kitts because Antigua's ban was live and direct. So we recognize this. If you also reference the first part of the bill in terms of the administration, the bill acknowledges a competent authority. And it says, for the purposes of this act, the Department of Environment is the designated and competent authority. Sections 2 and Section 3 says the department, the functions of the competent authority shall be to exercise primary regulatory oversight, ensuring compliance with the act, conduct routine inspections of manufacturers, distributors, retailers, and other commercial entities. Madam Speaker, we don't have the manpower to go to every mom and pop shop and every burger shop and every chicken and chips shop and every barbecue vendor on a Friday night to say, hey, are you giving out your food in a plastic bag? We don't. And this is why behavioral change and support is so critical. We know that there will be some persons who still do it on April 1st. We know by April 30th, there still will be a shop who says, just take it, I got it, what to do with it. But we know that at some point, the plastic bags will run out. We know that if a supermarket does it too often, there is going to be an environmentally conscious shopper who decides, I'm going to put this on Facebook because you are not supporting the ban or you are being wrong, unlawful. So we look to the support of the entire Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis in encouraging the transition. There are some key partners that we must acknowledge. We noted that in 2022, the St. Kitts and Nevis would have been the last country in the Eastern Caribbean to ban single-use plastics. Immediately, the government sprang into action to impose the ban. We participated in several high-level meetings globally and regionally to ensure our nation's intent was clear, not just as an international obligation, but as a commitment to protecting the lives of every Kittitian and Nevisian. So for our local partnerships, these have been made into success stories. Do you remember No Plastic Bag Mondays? No Plastic Bag July? Our supermarkets were ready, and other retailers were increased sensitization and awareness. And that's not without having people argue with our shop attendants. What am I going to do with my bread? What am I going to do with my chicken? How dare you not give me a plastic bag? I'm spending my money here. But several No Plastic Bag Mondays has resulted in people recognizing, walk out with your chicken and your bread in your hand, or bring your bag. We must use this opportunity to recognize the St. Mary's Biosphere Reserve pilot program for also addressing the plastic pollution. And their program has been very successful, and a recognition that when a community comes alive to partner with government, that great things can happen. Plastic Free July. For many years, I've been part of Plastic Free July. We're giving credit where credit is due. It has been a cornerstone of the tourism calendar and further underscores the importance of clean beaches, tracks, mountain trails for enhanced tourism products and livelihoods. As it relates to partnership and cooperation and corporate responsibility, just 2 days ago actually, I sat with the CEO of the St. Kitts Scenic Railway, and he explained that his company has taken on the mandate of keeping its trails clean. And what was unfortunate and heartbreaking for him, and he is not a Kittitian. Well, not by birth. Not by birth, but by interest. And just to even be more transparent, for a moment he was moved to tears by the fact that there are communities that take their garbage and dispose of them along the scenic railway tracks. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Causing the derailment, yes. But they, instead of blaming the government and blaming Kittitians and divisions, have incorporated in their operations and maintenance schedule, pick up the garbage and get rid of the garbage. Why should they have to clean our garbage? That's number one. Number two, why are you leaving your homes and taking your garbage to the roadside, like to the train side? How does that make sense? The very scenic railway that is the reason, one of the reasons that many cruise lines decide that St. Kitts is a stop on its schedule, because railways are dying globally, so this is a treasure. And we cannot afford to impact it, any tourism business, with garbage. In terms of international advocacy and diplomatic efforts, last year, the Ministries of Environment and the Ministries of Agriculture, in particular the Department of Marine Resources, reaffirmed our commitment at the Our Oceans 9 conference in Greece, who has since become a reliable partner. The government of Italy, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the International Cooperation Unit supported our participation in the IUCN-led project, Closing the Caribbean Plastic Tap Project. This is a critical project which will take us to 2026 and will allow us to access resources, technical support, and strategic partnership and technical capacity towards addressing plastic pollution. To the Government of Canada and the Canadian High Commission, support and strategic partnership, and thanks in particular to the High Commissioner former Sherry Truss, and current High Commissioner Mr. Samuel Berridge, and their team for the work, the support, and the guidance and the connection with the Government of Canada to ensure that we have a strategic framework in mapping the cost and benefit and the impact on various demographics in our society. We have participated through the Bureau of Standards, Mr. Franklin Connor, and our Director of Environment, Mr. Darian Edmead, in a series of international plastic negotiations, which will continue up until August to ensure that we are in line with regional and international standards. To the United Nations Environmental Programme and UNEA 7, and with direct conversations with UNEP, St. Kitts and Nevis has had the opportunity to serve on the board of UNEA 7, the United Nations Environmental Assembly. This is no small accomplishment for the smallest nation in the Western Hemisphere to serve on an international board. This has provided us with access, with training opportunities, with an opportunity to be part of the deliberations on international statements on environment, plastic, and climate change, the triple planetary crisis, before any other government in the world sees these statements. Don't take it lightly what St. Kitts and Nevis is doing in the environmental agenda. We have had an amplified global and regional voice because of the work of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we truly appreciate the coordinated support. Many thanks to the UN mission in New York, where our negotiations started way back in 2022. We turned to our regional partners and sister countries for support. And I must use this opportunity to thank the government of Antigua and Barbuda, in particular, Sir Malwin Joseph, for his guidance and stewardship back in 2022. In closing, originally, plastic products were invented as a source of great convenience because they were cheaper, lightweight, more durable, solutions to our everyday needs. However, because of single-use plastics and because they are made primarily of fossil fuel chemicals and have such a short lifespan in terms of use, but long lifespan in terms of existence on planet Earth, the consequences have been overbearingly negative for health, for humankind, for prosperity, for biodiversity, for ecology. Recently, the Connery landfill caught fire, a clear indication that it is approaching its expiration date. Any continued reliance on single-use plastics would serve only to further worsen the consistency, as you can see our GM here, Nelvin Maynard, the day of the fire. The consistency and intensity of instances such as these, which of course disrupts community, disrupts life with toxic emissions and poor air quality. Imagine if that was the day of life for us here in St. Kitts. Asthma, breathing challenges, that's untenable. And this is a situation that we are attempting to avoid. And we are recognizing, based on our own analysis of the landfill, that the majority of the waste in the landfill is plastic waste. The plastic is burning, it's toxic, it's gonna impact our breathing, our health, our survival. On the days of the fire, the landfill fire, workers in the industrial area complain, they can't go to work, livelihoods lost. What does the owner do if your worker says, I cannot be here in Connery working because of the fire? 3 days of livelihoods and income lost. In March 2022, member states of the United Nations met at the 5th session of the UN Environmental Assembly, and then is when they agreed to end plastic pollution. Heading towards the 7th session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly, St. Kitts and Nevis is a key decision maker, and as such, we must support this opportunity for decision making globally with action locally. The pursuit of sustainability must be a cohesive one. The natural world is a cycle where our interactions with the earth, it's all interconnected, and it returns to us in some way, impacting our health, well-being, and our ability to just thrive. This initiative and our broader sustainable island state agenda are about bringing sustainability home to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. It's showcasing it for what it is, more than just policy, but also practice an existing reality that we can access and amplify with the right behavioral change and mindset shifts. So, what does today mean? I asked you in starting, why are we here? And I ask you now, why did you listen for just 20 minutes?
US.
In 2022, when the Prime Minister, with the support of the entire cabinet, decided to present the vision to transform St. Kitts and Nevis into a sustainable island state, we knew that it required bold action, transformative action, and legislative support. The passage of this bill represents a massive step towards our federation's journey towards full sustainability. It is a milestone success that marks the point of convergence of countless rounds of intricate stakeholder consultations, federation-wide awareness, including schools, the public, social media, policy reviews, adjustments, cabinet decisions, inter-island conversations with the Nevis Island administration, interministerial deliberations. We have been on this journey for 4+ years. Many leaders have been a part of this decisive moment. So it fills me with immense joy, a great sense of pride to stand here at this juncture and welcome the passage of this bill in this honorable House. This piece of legislation is a clear success and a win, not only for the Ministry of Environment et al., not only for the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, not only for the Nevis Island administration, not only for the Parliament. This piece of legislation is a clear success, a big win for our country's legacy on sustainability. But, and most importantly, it is a big win for the survival, the good health, the well-being, the environmental and economic prosperity of the good people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I thank you.